So many Korean people are just like on edge, just like explode anger. Like I haven't seen so many fights. Like I went to Lovejoy High School in Clayton County, Georgia, and I have not seen so many fights even there that I've been seeing in Korea with these old people. Hello friends and family, this is Megan Moon, aka 저는 미국 사람입니다, and I am back in the studio with another talking video. It's been forever since I've done a talking video. If you've been with me for a while, then you would have seen my previous talking videos. They're typically pretty short. They have music, editing, cuts, all this stuff. But the last talking video I made was somewhat of a more serious topic. And so I made it sort of more podcasty, where I just kind of sat in front of the camera and talked with you. You guys seem to really like it. And actually I got many DMs from people asking me to do more of those talking videos. So for the past 12 years that I've been in Korea, you know, I've been making videos that are mostly positive about Korea. You guys know I have a tremendous respect for Korea and the Korean people. I love it here. I think in the past I stayed away from doing videos that talked about negative cultural aspects about Korea, just because the culture here is very much you don't say what's negative about what's happening, okay? And especially if you're a foreign person and maybe you're disclosing some aspects about Korea that aren't positive, people tend to have big negative reactions. So I kind of was afraid of those. But I do think it is important to be honest and open and have these like honest, open talks. After the previous video that I made about depression, in order to sort of prepare for that video and dealing with certain things in my own marriage and life here in Korea, I bought a bunch of Korean marriage books and like family dynamics and society. Saw a bunch of podcasts and watched some YouTube videos. So my YouTube algorithm is like basically all like Korean psychology. And a lot of the stuff that I had been feeling in my own personal life, the discomfort, the hardships, and things that I've heard my friends talk about, things in their marriages. Actually, I heard psychologists sort of explain why that is. And so it really helped me to like understand and grasp these concepts better. So actually I feel better prepared to speak with you about these things as well. And for today's topic, I thought I would talk about some hardships in marriage and certain cultural aspects about Korean culture that can make marriage very difficult, starting with in-laws. So I do want to preface by saying I'm not saying that these people are horrible people, they're bad people, they're just a product of their culture, right? The previous generation, the mom-in-laws, they were born right after the Korean War. Like my parents-in-law were literally born right after the Korean War, when Korea was totally different. It was an agrarian society, farmers, and then suddenly we moved into a totally different society, and their values and stuff are like 200-300 years old. But the younger people, like my husband, was raised in a totally different society. And so the young people and old people have a huge disagreement in values, but the young people don't know how to come out of it. So I'm not saying that these older people are bad for any people watching. I'm just saying they make it very stressful for us sometimes. A lot of Korean in-laws, especially the moms, are very enmeshed with their children. The previous generation of people, you know, they stayed married. Like the divorce rate was very, very low. But the quality of the marriages seemed to have been very, very poor, sort of lacking mutual respect, positive, healthy communication, healthy boundaries, emotional support. So from what I've heard from a lot of people this age and what I've seen is that a lot of people dealt with parents who are arguing or fighting or just weren't, you know, sort of one with each other. And most people just stay together because they think, oh, well, you know, we have kids, so we have to stay together. But in a lot of homes, apparently people sort of verbalize that, oh, my life is so difficult. Like the moms, like, will maybe sort of vent to the kids, like, oh, my life is so difficult. And, you know, because of you, I have to do this. I have to stay with this person. I'm staying in this marriage because of you. And so the children feel sort of like they're burdens to their parents, and they sort of feel responsible for their parents' happiness. And when you couple that with the culture of hyodo, which that is a culture basically of you pay back your parents for raising you, there's this sort of feeling that people have that just them being there and being happy is not enough, you know, for their parents. Like they have to do something and like pay their parents back somehow. But that's a huge burden to carry, right? Your parents give you life, you don't pay it back to them, you pay it back from giving the next generation life. Like it's one of those things that gets paid forward, but here it's like, no. You pay back to the parents, okay? We did this for you, we were in this marriage for you that I didn't really like, I wasn't unhappy raising you, so now that you're grown, you need to make me happy. And making me happy is doing everything that I say and sort of living your life for me. And a lot of the moms relied heavily on their kids for emotional support, it seems. And a lot of moms especially rely very heavily emotionally, like for validation and whatnot, through their son. Seems like the validation and love and support, like emotional things that they couldn't get from their husband, they're like trying to get from their son. And even after marriage, they can't seem to let that go. And because the son sort of grew up feeling like they're a burden to their parents and they need to pay their parents back, they think that they're sort of obliged to be that emotional support for their mom. Especially when they grew up seeing their fathers prioritize their mom, prioritize grandma over mom. And especially when you couple that with the old Confucian culture, which is basically blood is more important than not blood people, right? So traditionally, if you were a wife, you were considered you married into the husband's families. There's dad, mom, there's a son, everyone else in the family, and then you're like sort of the last one in the totem pole, and your job marrying into a Korean family is basically to do whatever mom wants you to do and to be there to take care of the parents. You had like really no ranking like in the family. And so there was a big lack of respect for the wives that came in because Korean society is really based on like hierarchy. Like people know that it's better that everybody's just sort of equal and you're older than me, so I have to use this special language for you and you don't have to respect me because you're old. But that culture is still very much alive. Like a lot of people who are older feel like they sort of outrank the younger people and they don't really need to respect them. So actually even the word daughter-in-law in Korean, 며느리, there is this one psychologist, her name is Lee Ju-eun, and she made a video about like the history of the word 며느리, and she's like, we need to stop saying 며느리, which means daughter-in-law. But apparently 며느리 means 기생한다, like from the sun. So basically it means that you're like a parasite of the sun. So even the term in and of itself is like, you're that person who's like coming and sucking from our family. So the psychologist who made that video, she's like in her 60s. So she's a part of that sort of previous generation that was born like somewhere right after the Korean War. And she said that in her time, like when you got married, you weren't even allowed to do any sort of affection at all. Like in front of the older people is considered disrespectful. Like how dare you show that you love this other woman that's not your mom or dad in front of your mom or dad. So traditionally, you got married so that you could go and be a daughter-in-law to the parents-in-law. So the parents would dictate everything that you do. There's no boundaries. You just have to go in, put your head low, go in and do whatever they want, take whatever disrespect that they gave to you. And that culture was still alive even just one generation ago. And so people know that you can't be that way and you shouldn't be that way now, but it's, things can't really change in one generation, right? It's going to take a couple. And also the previous generation sort of thinks that children are their property, right? Like, you're my property. It doesn't matter what you think, doesn't matter what you feel. I don't care, right? Basically, just your life is to do what I tell you to do. And so the younger generation, they know that that's not good, and they actually greatly dislike it. They don't even really like being around their parents just because the generational gap is so big. It's difficult to even really have good, meaningful conversations with them, according to a lot of people, but they feel a tremendous amount of guilt if they're not doing what their parents want them to do. And if they do go against what their parents want, the parents can sort of make them feel very guilty about it. There's this pressure that they need to be a good son. But you have to be a good son. You have to be a good son. It seems like there's more pressure to be a good son than it is to be a good husband a lot of the times, even still to this day. And a lot of moms express betrayal. Like if their son prioritizes their wife, they feel betrayed. My son has changed. He likes this other woman beside his mom. How could he do that? And so as a result, a lot of people really struggle to prioritize their wife and kids over their parents, even to the point of leaving their wife if there's a particular thing that their parents want from them and the wife's like, I don't want it. They're like, okay, well, bye. I'm just going to go do whatever my parents wanted. And I have friends who are therapists, and they share that the biggest thing that couples come in for, like for therapy, literally is just in-law stuff. Like, especially nowadays, it's switched to where a lot of the women are like still so enmeshed with their moms, but it's mainly on the part of the husband still. There's this monk on YouTube, his name is Sunnim, and I love listening to him talk, but basically on his show, Korean people will either call in on video call or like go to one of his things and like ask him a question and he answers it. Something that's still an issue, even just like 3 weeks ago, somebody called into Sunnim and they were like, so my dad passed away, my mom is just a widow now. So I had her come live with us, and she lived with us, but then she's so like kind of rude to my wife. So my wife is like, okay, I can't have her in the house anymore, kick her out. So he kicked out the mom, but got her an apartment, and he was telling Sunnim that he feels bad leaving his mom alone. So he's going to live with his mom and leaving his wife and kids. And he's like, bro, Your mom can't be alone because her husband died, but then you're leaving your wife to be alone. And one thing that he brought up in that video was something that they need to do is to really change that sort of mentality, because it really trickles down and impacts everyone in the family, especially the children, negatively. And what's even more sad is there are some people who are literally forfeiting marriage altogether. Just a couple weeks ago, I was watching the Ijun YouTube channel, and she said it's so sad she has so many people who will literally say, you know, my mom is really difficult to deal with. I don't even want to see her, like my own mom. So I think I just have to forfeit marriage because what woman will want to deal with my mom? And the therapist said, that's sad. And obviously you can't and shouldn't forfeit, you know, your life because you think you need to take care of your mom because she's too difficult. But she said the even more sad thing is that a lot of those moms will say, yeah, that's a good idea. This one is like a more extreme case, but there's still so many of these cases. They have really been guilted into thinking that parents are the priority over everything, even their own happiness, their own wife and kids. So if you are going to get married in Korea and you're here, then it's definitely something that you're going to have a lot of conversations about and really learn where your partner stands, especially if you're a woman, you know, marrying a man, where your partner stands on the scale, because everybody's on the scale somewhere. Even if you have someone like my husband, Mr. Moo, who's good at stating boundaries, like my wife doesn't want it, she said no, like stop asking, like he'll just verbalize those things like to them for me, like my wife said no, okay? Even someone like him still feels a tremendous amount of guilt for doing so, because it feels like I feel like it's wrong of me to set up boundaries with my parents, or it's wrong for me to do this, because they've sort of been trained from a young age that there's no boundaries with parents. You just sort of do what they want you to do. So definitely you need to have that conversation with your partner and figure out where they stand on the scale of, are you going to set up boundaries with your parents or let them run over our lives? But it's something that would be a big struggle for them. So if you are here and you are marrying a guy and he's making a decision for your family that's maybe contrary to what the parents want, you really have to encourage him a lot. So let's move back to the hyodo. Remember I mentioned hyodo was the culture of you having to sort of pay your parents back for raising you, etc. For a lot of people, it randomly starts just after marriage. And this is something that was interesting because I sort of experienced something like this too. Even if they've already been moved out of their parents' house and they haven't been doing anything for their parents, the moment they get married, they take their wife and they say, hey, we're going to do this for my parents. And it puts a lot of pressure on the wives who are like, wait a minute now, this whole time we've been dating, we haven't, now all of a sudden we're married, you want us to like focus on your parents? And apparently this is a phenomenon. I've talked to a couple of therapists and psychologists about it and seen a lot of content about it. It's sort of that old culture where the marriage was in support of the parents is still very much alive. And they feel like some sort of guilt about just going and living their marriage. It's like, I got to do something for my parents. So there are so many cases I've heard of people who are not living with their parents, like guys not living with their parents, and they only go to visit their parents in holidays. They don't see them besides that. But for some reason, when they get married, they're like, you know what? Now that we're married, let's go see my parents like twice a month or something like that. And so a lot of women are blindsided, not foreign people, but like Korean women have talked about this too. Like, so we're dating. He visited his parents on holidays. He's not, you know, trying to see them or do anything with them. But suddenly we get married and now he wants me to go meet with them like twice a month and like do all this stuff for them. As a wife, you're the one who sort of carries the pressure of trying to make the parents happy, because in a lot of cases, the sons and the parents actually don't have a good relationship. So it's sort of like you become the in-between person. And in a lot of cases, the mom-in-law will ask you how he's doing instead of asking him directly, and that puts a lot of pressure on people, especially after you have kids. Like maybe they don't like their parents and they don't want to see them, but they feel like they need to show their wife and kids to the parents to sort of make them happy. So everything is sort of about what the parents want in their life, and it really makes marriage very difficult. In society, it seems very romanticized. Like even after marriage, look, everyone's all together and everyone's so happy. Even I did a TV show here. I don't know if you guys remember. And the TV show, they were like, okay, we need to have you with the in-laws and let's go down to the countryside to even be with the grandparents. Look, and on the show, they were like, look, all the generations are together. And for some reason, if your group doesn't get along, your families don't get along, then a lot of people feel pressure to like just try and meet up with them anyway. You're the issue. It's not them forcing their old ways or controlling you or doing whatever. You're the issue. You just need to like your parents and do whatever they want. There are even some families where, this is not my family because I'm somebody who has very strong boundaries and I I will say them because I'm sorry, but I cannot be doing some of these things. I think if you are someone who's gonna get married in Korea, you do need to be someone who's very vocal about what you will and will not do, and not someone who is just gonna just do whatever everyone wants, because you can only hold in dislike for so long. Eventually, you're probably gonna explode on them, right? So you do have to be someone who's willing to sort of speak up about what you will and will not do. There are a lot of families where the mom-in-law requires the daughter-in-law to call every once in a while. In some families, it's like once a week. In some families, I've heard of the worst stories. It's literally like every day the mom-in-law wants a daughter-in-law to call. The psychologists have said it's sort of a way to show that they have power over you. Like, is she calling me? Is she under me still? It's like they're always checking, like, am I above you? Whoop. Hit the mic. Especially because it only goes towards the daughter-in-laws to the husband's family. It's not the other way around. And so that's something else that could cause a lot of issue, because there's a big focus on the husband's family. And sometimes you're like, okay, well, what about, I have a family too. Like, I didn't just pop out of the sky. Like, hey. So especially for holidays and getting gifts and where money is going to be exchanged to the in-laws, all the therapists say everything needs to be calculative. Like in relationships, typically it's not good to be calculative, but if you buy a gift for the husband parents, you need to buy the same gift of equal value to the wife parents. If you're going to spend X amount of hours on the holiday at this parent's house, then you need to spend the same amount of time at that parent's house, because there's still older people who think that holidays only need to be spent with the husband's parents, even to this day, where they still sort of have this husband's family first mentality. And that puts a lot of strain on the marriage as well, because it's like, okay, if we're going to always do these things for in-laws, it needs to be equal on both sides. And that culture still hasn't, caught up so much. Even so much so that in the Korean language, actually, if you're a daughter-in-law, you call your mother and father-in-law 어머님, 아버님, which means mom and dad. But the husbands don't call their wife's parents mom and dad. There's other words for it, 장인, 장모. So it's like you're required to mom and dad to your husband's family, but your husband's family and your husband call your mom and dad wife, mom, and dad. Like it's different words for it. So there can be a lot of inequality on how much attention is paid toward either side. But I hear nowadays a lot more cases of it being the opposite way are starting to pop up, and a lot of men are speaking up and saying that they don't like their in-laws, their wife's parents are too intruding or doing whatever. So it's not good on either side. One other thing that could make it really hard is just the notion of monthly allowance. Typically, it was just given to your husband's family. But it's very stressful in marriage because the women are saying, well, if we're giving money to parents, we need to give both sides of parents money. So you have this pressure on a newlywed couple. The cost of housing and stuff is so expensive anyway. And then now they have to give money to either side of the family. That's such a stressful thing. And that's one of the reasons why people feel like they need more money, because they have all of these extra pressures. Even if maybe their in-laws have or make more money than them, they still feel, obligated to send that money. And it's something that's very stressful. But just the in-law stress in general, one thing that I really saw and learned like in the marriage books is it really keeps couples from emotionally connecting the way that they should. Which brings me to the next thing that could make it a bit difficult in marriage, which is just sort of a lack of emotional depth. It's difficult for a lot of people to really deeply connect with people emotionally because of the way that they were raised. In the previous generation, people weren't really allowed to express themselves or to speak up or to say anything that made them uncomfortable. The parents would sort of get mad. So people grow up feeling like if I share my emotions, somebody's going to get mad, right? Or people are not going to accept it, and then I'm going to get hurt even more. So people are very, very afraid to be vulnerable and actually share what's on their heart and mind. And they sort of make an attempt to I'll just gloss over it. I don't have to say anything. I'll just move past it. And for a lot of people, like opening up and complaining about emotional turmoil is seen as sort of something that's a bit weak. Why don't you just be stronger and deal with it for the sake of the relationship? So if you are going to be, even just in a relationship with someone, here in Korea, I've noticed you really have to coax people to like share what's on their mind sometimes. It's one of the things that leads to the explosive anger that a lot of Korean people have because they're so repressed. Because people are taught to not share anything because you're going to mess up. Even sometimes it's difficult to make friends. Like if you're somebody who's used to having deep conversations, like even Korean people have complained about this with me. Like sometimes if there's certain people you try and open up with and share, they get angry. Like, why are you putting your stuff on me? Like, I got my own stuff I'm dealing with. So it can be very difficult to find people you can even have those deep, meaningful conversations with and like kind of encourage and connect with one another. And when you repress your emotions and you feel irritated about something someone's doing, but you're not telling them, you know, we're not robots, we're humans. Eventually, you're going to explode, right? And so that's why so many Korean people are just like on edge, just like explode anger. Like I haven't seen so many fights. Like I went to Lovejoy High School, okay, in Clayton County, Georgia, and I have not seen so many fights even there that I've been seeing in Korea with these old people. Subways, fight. Just walking the street outside, two old people fighting. My neighborhood, in my yard, the next door neighbor and some other people in the neighborhood. Oh, I filmed it. I sent it to Moon. I said, Mom, he is cursing. He's like, 새끼야, 대한민국에서 가장 큰 사기꾼이야, 이 새끼야. Just no emotional regulation of these old people. I cannot. People were not really taught how to express negative emotion. So they hold the stuff in and then just explode. Even like last time we had a barbecue, I think it was, Brianna was coming on the subway coming. Some people were fighting and she recorded a video too. Like they are ready to fight. It was one of the things that I sort of mentioned in the depression video as well, because people don't really know that whole idea of talking with people and sharing your emotions like connects you and makes you feel better. So I say all that to say, for this generation of people, it's very hard for them to say things that are bothering them, and they've sort of been trained. If something bothers them, it's because they're not strong enough. They're too sensitive. They need to just get over it, right? Just get over it for the sake of your relationship. But the thing is, you can't hold stuff in for so long. Eventually people will get angry and like explode at you, and or silently just say that they want a divorce without ever having talked to you about what happened. I'm a talker. If I see that there's something uncomfortable, I will say something. But just know, if you are going to get married in Korea, it's possible that you're going to have to be the one that brings up the stuff and like sort of coax your partner to like talk about things. Another thing that could put a strain on a marriage and be hard for marriage is just work hours. Like people work the craziest hours like all day until like night. So like a lot of cases is especially bad for the kids because they never see one or both of their mom or dad all day and really only get to spend time with them on the weekends. And that can be very difficult for some couples. I know it's something that's a bit difficult for me and Moon because he's basically gone all day until I go to sleep. So we only see him in the morning when he's just getting ready for work, and then that's it. Just basically on the weekends is really the only time that we have to like sit down and chill. But then when you've been working all day and barely getting any sleep all week, on the weekend you don't really want to do much. So there's a lot of cases of people are just so exhausted on the weekends to really spend good quality time and connect with their families. But it seems like a lot of people here were sort of trained to believe that just making money is more important even than interpersonal relationships. I mentioned this in the depression video, but there was this sort of study that they did, and they did massive surveys of people across like 19 different countries, asking things that they valued. And in every other country, people valued relationships first. Only in one of those countries did people value material well-being first, and that was Korea. People who don't have emotional depth in their relationships are going to seek that somewhere else. And it seems like money is something that's sort of tangible that people can hold on to. And they tend to seek that more for security because it doesn't seem like they've really known emotional security. And it's so sad, because relationships turn to just roles. Like, doesn't matter if I like this person. Obviously, duty is important in relationships because you're not always gonna like your husband or wife. I made a video talking about that years ago, about things I've learned about marriage in Korea. Like, there's a duty aspect to it. That's what keeps people together. But at the same time, there still needs to be depth in the relationship, but you need to be able to have conversations and spend quality time together with your spouse and your kids, etc. And it shouldn't just be, I feel nothing for this person. In fact, I hate them, but I'm just here doing my role because this is what I'm expected to do. It seems almost sort of empty, and like there's a big lack of connection for a lot of people. And that is something that also I think is just, it's really sad. So the last thing that could put a big strain on your relationship here, on your marriage in Korea, is housework. That's if you're a woman married to a Korean man, of course. There's a lot of stuff about it on the news and like everywhere. But in Korea, if the couple is both working, the man does an average of 40 minutes of housework a day, and the woman does 3 hours and 14 minutes. So even though they're working the same, 3 hours versus 40 minutes, that's a big difference. And if only the man is working and the mom's a stay-at-home mom, she does about 6 hours and 16 minutes of work. And the guy actually does about 47 minutes. Only he actually does more housework. That's a very interesting phenomenon. But out of all the OECD nations, Korea is dead last in the amount of housework that men will do. The place with the highest amount of housework that men do is Denmark. They do about 186 minutes of housework a day. And the average for the OECD nations is 139 minutes, so just over 2 hours. In Korea, men average 45 minutes of housework a day. And there was another news story that popped up, and it had some nations that were not OECD nations, but everybody was like so surprised. On the news, it came up that Korean men even do less housework than men do in India. Apparently in India, the average is 52 minutes a day. So Korea is, dead last, which obviously working hours are very, very long here. So just the amount of hours you have in a day would be much less to do anything. But when the women are working, they're still doing, over 3 hours of housework. I think when you have a mom who's super hyper focused on you and sort of enmeshed with you and doing everything for you, when you grow up and live on your own and get a wife, I think it's really hard to know even what to do around the house unless someone tells you. But in Korea, it's sort of drilled into man's head that they work, they provide. Yes, that's a great thing. I think they're great providers. They will do whatever they need to do to make sure that their family is okay. And that's something that's great. That's something that's very admirable. But I think the other aspects of relationships are neglected, like spending time with your kids, like sort of emotionally connecting with them. That connection aspect of, husband and fatherly duties seems to be something that's missing. And up until they've gotten married, their moms are doing everything for them, like every little thing. So if you suddenly take someone who's treated like that and then put them in a situation where they're expected to contribute around the house, it's really hard for a lot of people to fall in line with that. So you have to have a lot of talks about your expectations with that. And in a lot of cases, people live with their parents until like their 30s. So even as working adult, they go to work, they come back to their house where the mom's doing everything. They don't have to contribute to any sort of household chores. And then they get married, they're still working the same job, but now they have to do extra household work. It's just something that's not really native for them because the moms literally do everything. Even if they move out of the house, the mom will come every week to make food and do laundry. And there's so many people, even in college, like their mom will go to their college to get their laundry and do their laundry for them. And so many people don't even know how to do laundry, even like into early adulthood. Well, I think it's admirable to want to do everything to take care of your kids. I do think they enable them a lot, and because of the overreach of the moms, a lot of people don't know how to do basic things. Like their life skills are very low. They just know how to study or they just know how to work, and that's it. They've never had to think about what they want to do in their life or make decisions for themselves because everything was set up for their parents. So that's something that just makes it difficult in general to really have people get out and live their own lives and like do something like have a marriage, because a lot of people seem to not really even know who they are outside of maybe what their parents or society expects of them. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. I literally just sat down and word salad about all the things that I've either learned or experienced. And again, I don't want people to think I'm just here like bashing these people, but I just want you to know that these are some things that go on in society. Before you get married, just share your expectations and just have the open communication and make sure that they're open to having that communication as well. Otherwise, it could be a little bit more difficult, but I think compared to places where you don't have these societal or in-law influences, there's a lot more talking that you need to do about just like stuff in general. I think it's definitely much more difficult to maintain a marriage here, but definitely something that you need to be aware of. Make sure that you are somebody who can speak up for yourself and share your boundaries, what you will and will not do. But also you do have to be open to doing some of those things as well that your in-laws expect you to do, because obviously, you're in a different country. You can't just, I'm just doing it my way and that's it. So obviously you will have to compromise on some things, but it requires a lot of talking, a lot of soul searching. And I do think that in order to be married in Korea as a woman, you do need to be quite strong mentally, and you do need to be able to like speak up for yourself, but also you have to be able to compromise. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. During my research, on the news, there's a lot of things that we're talking about, like just crazy in-law stories, because a lot of people like share their stories with these psychologists online or with Pomrunsunim, the monk that I mentioned, or like even on the news. JTPC News has this segment on the news where people share their crazy like family stories, and they have a therapist and like a divorce lawyer get on there and say like if it's grounds for divorce or not, or what they could do to overcome it. And there are some insane stories. If you want me to just have like a time where we just sit down and I just share like the craziest stories that I've come across, then let me know. That could be the video that I do for next week. Just let me know in the comments if you enjoyed it, or if there's something that you want me to talk about or share my ideas about. I mean, I don't know. Who am I to share my ideas? Everything doesn't have to be about Korea. It could just be about random things that are happening. If you just care to know what I think for whatever reason, I don't know. I'm still always like, why do people care what I think? I don't know. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching and for all the support. If you like this video and you'd like to see more videos, please subscribe to my YouTube page, which is down below. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter, TikTok, follow me on Instagram, and I will see ya.